Star Wars Outlaws could be releasing later than I originally thought this year, and with all of the latest things regarding Star Wars Hunters, I wanted to talk a little bit about this whole thing because a late 2024 release for Outlaws could have big implications for Star Wars Hunters. But before I get into that, make sure you are subscribed to the channel with the notification bell turned on to never miss a piece of Star Wars Hunters content. Now, at the start of this year, I thought Outlaws would be releasing in Q2, simply based on the fact that we had so much marketing material in mid last year. And then there was the very early announcement of Julian Geraghty going on to the Division 3, with that move happening after Star Wars Outlaws releases. That to me seemed like a very reasonable assumption, and as a result, Star Wars Hunters was probably then going to be releasing in late Q3 or early Q4, following its delay last year, which would have been pretty substantial. But Lucasfilm rightfully won't release two games around the same time that are of the same IP, simply because they're going to want to focus on one game with maximum potential. And if Hunters was going to release in Q1 of this year, we would absolutely know by now, considering we are basically a month in now. And we do also have the Dark Forces remaster happening at the end of February too. Now, even though that's not a big release like Hunters or Outlaws, it is still a release nonetheless, so they probably don't want to have another game releasing around the same time so that they can maximize sales there. Now, if they had Hunters and Outlaws releasing around the same time, then whilst they are very different games and releasing on totally different platforms, so despite not competing for space in that regard, they still compete for space on socials, and people might just get a little bit overwhelmed with the fact that two big Star Wars games are releasing at the same time. That could therefore have negative impact on sales for Star Wars Outlaws, and then potentially negatively impact the exposure for Star Wars Hunters. Outlaws is a big AAA Star Wars single player game, whereas Hunters is a mobile and Switch multiplayer game that focuses on small team play arena combat. Now, if people wanted their Star Wars gaming fix, and they're not too picky, then they may just download Hunters because it's free to play and no longer decide to buy Star Wars Outlaws. Alternatively though, they may not even find out about Hunters because of Outlaws being marketed and that game being the potential buyer's main focus. Now, that doesn't obviously mean that they can't find Hunters later on, but it just means that the initial launch of Hunters probably wouldn't be as successful as it could be, so I honestly just think it would be such a huge mess, and that is why I highly doubt it will happen. Now, at the start of this year, it was said that Star Wars Outlaws will be releasing in late 2024, but that was swiftly changed back to just a simple 2024 release, so perhaps that was just simply someone not knowing the actual release window of the game and making an assumption. But given this was a huge Disney publication, I think it could always just be a case of internally they know that Star Wars Outlaws will be releasing in late 2024, but obviously that isn't public information and they didn't realise. Now, how that got through, I don't know, but it's one of those things that could absolutely be true, and if it is, with that in mind, plus the fact that Lucasfilm won't release two games at the same time, it means that Star Wars Hunters will most likely be releasing before Star Wars Outlaws, and they could potentially have even just simply swapped their release dates. So that means that Star Wars Hunters will very likely release in Q2 this year, potentially around May 4th just because of Star Wars Day, and then Star Wars Outlaws then could potentially be releasing in September or October, and then perhaps the Indiana Jones game releases in November or December. Obviously this is just speculation based on the things that we actually know about, and some of the things that seem very likely to be the case with both of these games, so I personally would not be surprised to see Star Wars Hunters on our Nintendo Switches and released worldwide within the next 4 months, which is pretty crazy to think about, and it also means that we will probably get some pretty big news fairly soon. So make sure you are subscribed to the channel because I'll be going over absolutely all of the news as soon as it comes out for this game and many others, of course. That is it from me today though. Let me know what you think about all of this in the comments below. Thank you all very much for watching, and may the force be with you always.